Okay, welcome to the show. This is Ted Talks Too Much. And we've got another great one for you today. I am Ted Moss, ex-jackhammer operator, stand-up comedian, and your host. We are located in the OK Boomer Studios just outside of Flint, Michigan. That's right, Flint. Michigan's water wonderland, where they are still wondering when in the world will they get some clean water. While we all wait for that to happen, let's talk. And on today's show, we've got part 2 of the interview with 80s rap fan Tim Finkel. We'll be talking dating, dieting, and comedy. So if you've ever traveled the stand-up comedy road, or you want an insider's look from an astute student of the art, stay tuned.
Here's another monumental thing that happened for me this summer when we were in Hawaii. My wife and I celebrated our 10th anniversary. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm a happily married man, too. I'm very proud of that. A lot of couples aren't making it these days. The morning of our anniversary, my wife turns to me and with tears in her eyes and sincerity in her voice, she says, you know, I feel like the luckiest woman in the entire world. Every morning, I get to wake up next to my best friend. Yeah, and that's really nice. But I gotta tell you, man, my first thought was, are you talking about us or the dog? Now, don't get me wrong, I love my wife more than anything else in this entire world. I can't imagine a life without her. But I gotta be honest with you folks. She's not best friend material. Since I was 6 years old, his name's Brock Taylor. That's a badass name in the 1980s. In high school, he drove a Camaro IROC Z. My wife drives a minivan.
Okay, well, if you liked him before, you're going to get a chance to like him some more. He's going to talk to us a little bit about dating and the Finkel effect, dieting, comedy classes, a little bit on writing comedy, and what it's like to be part of the Detroit stand-up comedy community. Let's give an OK Boomer Studio welcome to my friend, Mr. Tim Finkel. Let's get into my favorite part of the show, where we talk about women.
Oh, yeah.
Baby.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm single and I'm dating. And you're married to a beautiful woman.
Yeah, much better looking than I am.
Way out of your league.
Yep.
Yeah, so I always ask people if they have any advice.
I don't know if I'm the guy to ask that because, I literally have barely ever dated in my entire life.
You're a guy with no game at all?
No, not at all. I've just been a guy who's had long-term girlfriends and then eventually a wife and nothing in between.
Well, how did you meet your wife?
I met my wife because I taught with her sister. And
you just showed up one day?
Yeah, she kind of...
Or the sister was kind of trying to set you up?
She was trying to set me up. She was my mentor teacher, her sister.
Oh.
Yeah, and she just kind of delivered me a perfect wife, all packaged and ready to go.
And you just said, okay.
She was 22 years old when I met her.
And how old were you?
I was 27, 28 at the time.
Nice spread. And she's a beautiful girl, and she's super nice. And she's with you, so she's super tolerant.
She's one of the sweetest people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have friends that I have friends I work with who have been through 3 divorces, and
Yeah.
whenever they all call me fucking Finkel, because they always joke that like these things always just kind of work out for me, not just
Yeah.
relationships, but sometimes other stuff, and they'll always be like, it's the fucking Finkel effect, man. It's like, how come that worked out? Fucking Finkel, man.
Are you the one who told me not to make a saying about Finkling the room?
Yeah.
Was that you?
Maybe, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, whenever he talks about my wife, he'll be like, "Oh, fuck you, man! Like you just
So
had
if it
that,
works out,
you had it
you
delivered to you in
you
a
Finkled
package."
it. Oh.
Yeah, I guess I don't know, but
Well, that's no help at all, dude.
no, I don't. I'm not the guy to ask because I haven't had to. Like I've literally gone on maybe like 3 first dates in my life, and they were all like people I ended up being in long-term relationships with.
I feel sorry for you at this point. That's sad, man.
Oh, no. You're the one talking about you want to share this with everyone. I look at you and I think I would like to have your life for a little while.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I would like to not share things with people for a little while. My life is nothing but sharing. I don't want to share for a little while now.
Well, if you'll let me go home to your wife and she's okay with it, we can do that for a week or 2.
How much money do you have? We can make this like a Demi Moore and
Well,
decent
I have to
proposal
pay.
type.
I have to pay.
Yeah,
Maybe you have to
I'm
pay if
talking-
you want to be here. Hold it. I think you're the one requesting. This kind of solitude and peace.
I'm thinking Indecent Proposal. You remember that movie?
Yeah, I do remember
yeah.
that. Yeah. I don't have that kind of money.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
I don't think you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what advice to give you, Ted. I think you can only fish with the bait that you have, right? And you don't want to bite a fish to bite on bait that isn't really you. So
Yeah, I agree.
You gotta keep
I've been giving
trying
out-
to sell your product.
I've been giving out links to my podcast. I'm
Yeah.
not catching anybody with that.
Yeah. Eventually, there's someone for everyone, Ted. Someone will buy you a product that no one wants to buy.
No.
Someone will eventually.
Well, the problem is that all the good women are taken.
Yeah, oh yeah.
At my age, I mean, if you're really good at being in a relationship,
Sure.
you're in a relationship. If you suck at it, you're like me.
Yeah.
You're out here going, how do I do this? And a lot of those people are really jaded too. They're like, yeah. And it's weird because dating now is like online shopping. People feel like there's unlimited supply and I can get exactly what I want. And these women are 60 years old, and I'm like, no, you can't.
Yeah.
And they're upset because their last husband, cheated on them and was an alcoholic. I said, well, I don't cheat and I'm not an alcoholic. Why do you need Mr. Perfect? I'm sorry I'm 20 pounds overweight, but you can't have everything.
There you go. Lose some weight. You wanted advice.
All right. I started the keto diet again a couple days ago.
Oh,
so
there
we'll
you
see
go.
this.
The bacon diet.
Yeah, the eat a bunch of meat and no carbs diet. Actually, I lost a lot of weight on it last year.
Yeah, I'm sure it worked.
I went from like 235 down to 207.
Yeah.
I was trying to get to under 200, didn't quite make it.
Yeah.
But this quarantine.
People have had
It's-
fantastic results with it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it depends on. A diet has to be for life, though. You can't just do a diet,
Yeah.
temporarily and go, okay, I'm there now. Now I can go back to eating lousy. You got to find a diet you can live with. So
You know what's interesting is when I was bike racing, I would eat 500 calories a day,
I bet you
usually,
would.
like pretty consistently. And I was maybe 30 pounds lighter than I am right now. And I'm not overweight right now, but I did develop like some pretty healthy eating habits. But I would say now at this time in my life, and I still exercise every day, and I still ride, just not like what I used to. But I eat whatever I want now, and I drink whatever I want every single day because I went 15 years of like, at some periods, like weighing all of my food. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm done with that now,
Yeah,
man. Like,
right.
it might backfire on me years from now, but right now I'm like, I understand why athletes, when you see them, that like professional basketball players or guys like that, like we had Rick Mahorn come to our school one
Yeah.
year. His ass was 3 times the width of when he was playing basketball.
I'll bet.
And I get it because
bet.
like when the party's over, you're like, all right,
Well, the problem is that your metabolism changes. I mean, I graduated from high school at 140 pounds, 6 foot tall. I mean, I didn't weigh over 155 pounds when I was 50 years old. But when your metabolism changes,
At 50 years old?
Yes.
That's interesting because I heard a stat once that whatever weight you are when you turn 40, like a vast majority of people stay within a 10% window of that.
No.
But that doesn't seem true.
Well,
huh?
actually, I smoked until I was 50. I quit smoking on my 50th birthday, and that, I think, helped my metabolism change or whatever. And I remember because I had a cottage up north and it was winter, and I went up to put on some skates to shovel off part of the lake so the kids could ice skate. And I bent over to tie the skates, and I lost my breath. I thought, why can I not breathe? It's because my stomach had gotten big enough where it was putting pressure on my lungs when I tied my skates. And I had never been heavy. I had never laid on my side in bed and felt my stomach laying beside me. You know, I was the skinniest guy in school, and I was always skinny. And I could eat 2 Halo Burger Deluxe with olives and a mini burger in the car on the way back, a large fry and a shake every day for lunch, and not even blink.
That's a Flint thing, right?
Yeah,
Halo burger?
yeah, it is. So, yeah, it's a great big jumbo, bigger than quarter pounder, 3/4, whatever. Anyhow, I used to eat whatever I wanted all the time and never gain 1 ounce. I mean, you could pinch my skin; it was so thin, there was nothing there. Nowadays, I eat 1 meal a day. I haven't had anything to eat today except 2 cups of coffee, and I'll have a meal about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then I'll have a snack at about 8 or 9. I'll go to bed at about 1. So I have a snack and a meal, and it's still hard to lose weight. So your metabolism really slows down, and the less you eat, it slows down even more. So it's a tough thing. I think your body has a weight it wants to get to, and everybody said once you turn 30, you'll put the weight on. Now, once you turn 40, you'll put the weight on. But for me, it was 50. It didn't happen until I was 50. And when the weight came on, I got up to 200 pounds really quick.
Yeah.
And then between there and here, it's, that's taken another 10 years, 15 years. But it all depends on what I'm doing. Sitting around all day, I'm doing some yard work. This isn't good.
Yeah. There's definitely, if you don't use it, you lose it aspect to it.
Well, when I was watching my daughter golf, and sometimes she do 18 holes twice in one day, which is 10 hours of steady walking. I could do 10 hours of steady walking and still be 220 pounds.
Yeah.
And not losing any weight, and not eating really big. Your metabolism just changes. Your body says, you got to look like your grandpa looked. You're like, God, grandpa was kind of tubby. He was kind of big in the middle. It's hard not to be big in the middle. And I'm not sure the foods I eat are the best.
Yeah.
I'm doing stir fries and I'm doing what I can, and I'm, trying to use the best sense I can when I eat. It's not perfect, but it's just a tough thing at some point. But for me, because I'm in quarantine, I haven't been worried about it that much. But now that I'm going to start dating again, I got to compete.
I think.
And at some point, somebody's going to see me in a hot tub. And they have to have really bad vision, or I have to lose some weight. Those are the options.
So here's my word of advice to you.
You're smiling. I can tell this is not going to be good. This won't be serious.
Yeah, I thought of a good piece of advice for you for dating. So,
all right, thank you.
And I can relate this to a lot of different aspects of life, too. I think you're thinking about it too much. That's part of the problem. Like, I dated a girl for a while before I met my wife, and when we broke up, I was in grad school at the time, and everyone in every one of my classes was all gorgeous women who were all my best friend when I was dating the other girl.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we broke up, and then all of a sudden I'm like on the prowl, and I'm thinking like, wow, I need to find like another girlfriend. And then all of the women who were all best friends and huggy with me, they were like, they sensed it now. And they ran. And they retreated.
They did.
Right?
They did.
Because now all of a sudden I'm trying. And so I learned that.
Don't try.
A lot of things in life, when you don't try, it goes back to like when I told you I had one of those best bike racing seasons. It was when I just stepped back a little bit.
Yeah.
And wasn't trying so
advice,
hard
actually.
anymore.
That's great. You know what?
Same thing with comedy, Ted.
Yeah.
Like, it's like when you like step back a little, you still care about it.
Well, hold on. I stepped back in December. I might be hilarious now.
You might be.
Who knew that was going to happen?
Yeah. No, I mean, you still care about it, but it's like you could relate it to golf too. Like if you're overthinking it, if you're there's an aspect you can get to where you're breaking it down too much mentally, and you're not relying on. You have a lot of instincts that'll happen naturally, and if you like kind of go with that.
You know what? I was talking to Billy Ray Bauer. He was in the other day, and he's a 30-year comic, and he's excellent. I don't know if you've seen
I've worked with Billy. He's fantastic.
Yeah. And he's very natural at it.
Yeah, he's
and
great.
I said, it seems to me that it's kind of like golf. You got to go practice. You got to learn the skills. And then once you know the skills, you got to go out and learn the course and the strategy. You got to learn all this stuff. But then eventually it becomes like a gymnastic tumbling run. Things are going to happen so fast, and they have to be natural. You can't think of where exactly to put your hands and how to shift your weight. You just got to feel your way through it. And the same thing with comedy. You just got to go, okay, now I got to forget everything I know and just go out there and be me. And things will lead into different jokes or different stories. And I know how to pause, and that'll just happen naturally. And maybe with dating, it's the same thing. I've also heard that, and I think this is true, that men are like dogs and women are like cats. And if you go to a new house, like when you arrived here, dogs run up, go, hi, how are you? Like me, pet me, don't you like me? This is great. This is guys. They meet a girl like, oh, here I am, don't you like me? But if you go to a house and somebody has a cat and you go in and you want to pet that cat and you start chasing that cat around to pet it, it's going to run away. You got to wait for that cat to kind of come up to you and then kind of touch you, give it a little bit of attention. Then it'll come back. Next thing you know, that cat can't get off, your shin. It's just rubbing up against you because you're giving it a little bit of attention when it decided it was time. So you just kind of acknowledge it and let it come to you.
Unless you're really powerful, then you can just grab them.
Yeah, well, I don't have groupies standing outside. Have you ever been recognized because you're a comic? Have you ever been someplace? And
A handful of times, but it was like...
Was it really fun and really cool?
Oh, yeah, it's cool. It's the best.
Selfies? Did you do selfies or anything like that?
No.
Oh, man.
No, I've done that like at the supermarket or things like that. But
that's fun. Yeah, I've gotten recognized a couple times. I had a guy a girl sitting by me at the Fenton Hotel going, you're the Finder Fucker guy. I'm like, yeah, I guess so. I don't know. Am I? I don't know. I hope I'm not, but maybe I am. Funniest story, though. I had a girl. It was off a dating site. It was one of the meet and greets. The first time you get together and just have a drink for an hour or whatever. And she was from a well-to-do neighborhood around Detroit. And she met me at a kind of it was an okay place, but it wasn't a top-end sort of place. It was just a pub in a strip mall. And I walked in, and she had arrived first. Beautiful girl, sitting in a booth. And before I could get to the booth, the waitress walked up to me and said, oh, my God, you're Ted Moss. And I said, yeah? Did somebody say they're waiting for me? She said, no, I know you. I said, oh, do you know me from comedy? She said, yeah. I said, have you seen me perform? She said, no, I just know you from online. You're hilarious. I said, oh, really? And she wanted to take a selfie and stuff. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, okay. She's going, oh, my boyfriend's, he's going to be thrilled. He won't, but he's a fan too. And I'd put up all those videos from our tour and stuff were kind of funny. And so anyhow, we did this. And then I went over, I hadn't even talked to the girl yet. And the lady I was going to meet. So I sat down and I talked. She said, well, that was something. And I said, yeah, it happens all the time. Oh, but it was fun.
Yeah,
it was fun.
You know what my favorite thing with comedy is, and like even more than like getting recognized or anything like that. Not that happens very often, but my favorite thing, and I think one of the most like the greatest compliments you can give to a comic is if you go and see their act, and then you go out through your everyday life, and something happens in your life that makes you think about that joke.
Yeah, or you use that tagline,
and you're like, oh, that's
yeah.
And anytime that ever happens, and another comic or a friend of mine or says, hey, I was doing this and I thought of your joke,
right?
That's like the greatest feeling for me. Because
yeah.
really, and Bill said this in
Bill Bouchard
in the first class ever. He said, comedy, really what it boils down to is you're trying to make a human connection with another person.
Wow, that's great.
That's what it is.
That's great.
You know what I forgot to tell you, Ted?
Yes.
Is
something about me.
No, we talked about getting started, taking Bill's class.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't told too many people this because I didn't want to be like braggy or anything. But Bill went on vacation shortly before the whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
And he hired me to substitute teach his class. So
how fun.
The class that was coming up now that was supposed to perform on March 22nd, I think, I had been teaching the class prior to that.
How'd you feel about that?
I loved it. It was like, it goes back to that, what I was talking about when I was at a teacher in service, and I'm like, they're getting to do their favorite thing right now. When I got to have that experience, I was so giddy. I was so excited. I loved talking with the other comics. I loved running through their sets with them. And I had this like epiphany where I'm like, this is my favorite thing right now. This is one of my favorite things.
Maybe that's what you should do.
I would love doing that.
Maybe you should teach the intermediate class.
Well, I can't bump someone.
Well, no, don't do the beginner. You can do the intermediate. Joel can do the advanced.
Yeah, I don't know if
maybe there's a spot.
Mark or Joel or Bill are looking to shove a new guy in the lineup or not. But
well,
I was just completely honored that he reached out to me to do that, and I loved it.
What did you think about the students? Did some of them have potential, or were they all like, this is going to be a public speaking one and done thing?
Maybe a handful of them, but they were a good group. They were really funny. They were dynamic. They were enthusiastic.
Were they shy? Were any of them like painfully shy, or were they good?
There was one student in particular that like you could tell they were dodging getting up there, you know. But they were one of the funniest ones too.
That's great. That's great. My least favorite comic that I run into once in a while, and it's nobody in particular, but I've run into this guy a number of times under a number of different names, is the guy that shows up at the open mic and tells you how funny he is before he goes up.
Sure.
And he just sucks. And then he leaves.
Yeah.
And like, well, that was interesting. I've seen you before. Dude, okay. That's great.
Yeah. No, it was an incredible experience. I would love to. I was really bummed that their show got canceled.
Yeah, are they gonna, they got to do it some other time.
I hope so.
They have to.
Well, I have like an emotionally vested interest in these people now because I got to see them.
Well, you should close the show or something. You know,
I was gonna host it.
Okay, so, yeah.
And I was scheduled to do that. It was the 22nd.
Yeah.
Ridley's had shut down already.
Did you ever host the advanced show? When you took the advanced class, usually he picks one person out of the.
I didn't host it, but I closed it out like a few months later.
Oh yeah, you were called back. Yeah, well that's an honor too. Yeah, I've done that too. I've come back for that, and I also hosted it when I took it the first time, and then the second time I said, well, I got to do it. Somebody else should be doing this instead of me. But yeah, that's a lot of fun.
I gotta tell, I had like my calendar filled like to July when all of this happened.
Have you thought about traveling at all?
I mean, well, I started, there's an agency that I started working with.
In Grand Rapids?
And I started working with Funny Business. I wasn't going to like drop names or anything, but.
Well, no, a lot of people do. That's...
So they were starting to send me other places and I was doing that. And so I was like booked through July. I was all excited. Everything was, it was started to feel like a real thing. Like a real thing. And, I was getting real comfortable with it. And it's a shame that all this went down. But I went like the first month of like when we were in lockdown, not missing it at all. And I felt like really thankful that it felt really refreshing to have the world on pause. And it wasn't until like the last few weeks that I realized how much I miss it and then how backed up I am too. Right.
Well, how do you write? I mean, do you have to isolate yourself to write, or does that come naturally, or do you write while you're doing other things or driving? Or
that's shifted throughout the years for me. When I first started, I would like actually block out time, and when anything would come to me, I'd write down a note, and then I'd go and revisit it, and I'd write it. The thing is, though, after you get like some time built up, I didn't do that as much anymore, and I started like coming up with like maybe one tiny little idea, and I started like trying to plant seeds like in my set.
Oh.
So like I'd come up with one funny line, and then I'd see where I could, and maybe I'd be featuring and doing 25 minutes or something, and I'd plug it in there in front of a real audience with the security of like,
I got funny stuff on both sides of it. Right.
And then just start building it from there. And I didn't do a lot of pencil and paper anymore, or maybe I would I'd have it constructed in my head like bullet points, and I'd do it at a show, and then I'd write it afterward. But I'll be honest with you, like I've wrote like short little funny observational one-liners since we've been home.
Right.
And but I haven't written at all. It's virtually, I don't have an environment at home right now to be able to do that. Like
Right.
you can't, your kids are around and you're not going to tell them like, you know what, daddy's going to go and write his dick and fart jokes in the office right now.
Exactly. Right.
So I haven't worried about it. And when I did that, I told you when I first got here today, I did a corporate Zoom show last week.
Right.
And by no means is it
anything like stand-up.
Not the real thing. And I would never even want to start that way. It was like no one would get into it if that's how you started doing comedy. But I had a comic friend of mine kind of talk me into it because I had a few other offers at the beginning and I'm just like, no, I just don't want to do it. Of course, this was a corporate show, so with that was corporate money, and you didn't want to turn that down. But I had a comic friend of mine talk me into doing it, and she goes, because after it was over, I told her I felt nervous during it. Like I was more nervous to go and do that live online show than I had been in the last 2 years to do stand-up. Yeah, it's weird doing it in your house too. Because I always did stand up to get out of the house.
How did they run it? Where did they say, "Okay, Tim, it's your time," and you do 5 minutes of time or something?
No, I did 25 minutes. It was only me. It was some wealth management company. They saw me at Ridley's.
What? And you're just standing there looking at a screen with a bunch of faces looking at you while you're trying to tell jokes?
I set my basement up as much of a stage as I could, and I moved around because I can't sit in a chair. I'm dynamic.
Sounds miserable.
It was, and like half the people were muted, and
so you couldn't hear them laugh if they were laughing.
But it was a set that I had dialed in, and I knew what the pacing was and all of that. Yeah. But what my comic friend who talked me into doing it, what she said, because I told her I was so nervous, and she goes, "That's why you do it." She goes, "Because it gave you that feeling of what it's like to go up again, and it gave you those nerves again, and it gave you that opportunity." She said it's not about like the performance; it's that you got to get those nervous feeling again, and it was right, and it was weird to like. I had to like go back and listen to some stuff and think like, do I still have this dialed in and everything?
Right. I found when I was performing a lot, like when Billy and I were on tour for 3 months, we performed 30 shows in 90 days. I wasn't writing a lot because you'd go, I'm going to do some new stuff. And then you'd kind of read the room and go, I got to do that solid stuff, or I got to do my dirty stuff. And I'm only going to get 5 minutes, or I'm only going to get 7 minutes. And there's, at that time, I think I had 3 8-minute sets. That's how I thought of it in my head. And I could make those a little bit briefer, drop something off in the middle or whatever if I had to. And it was hard to bring in brand new stuff when I know I got these 3 go-tos that are going to work pretty good, and you don't know these people, you want to make a good impression. It was not conducive to writing. And the next day we're riding in the vehicle, trying to find a place to stay and doing all that and talking about whatever. But it wasn't a time to be thoughtful. I don't think about comedy. I found, even when I was doing it locally, when I took a week off, or 2 weeks off because I was with my daughter golfing, doing her golf thing. Because I never did it as steady as you're doing it, ever. Because I was busy with my daughter who lived with me. That was our primary focus. I always found when I took a couple weeks off, that's when I could write. That's when things would come to me. Actually, I'm writing now, and I'm not even performing. I mean, I wrote a bit yesterday. Something just came to me. I thought, that's hilarious. But I was writing 10 years before I started doing stand-up. There was just... When I was making sales call, those books up on the far right, those are all notes that I kept in my car because people would say weird shit. And I go, that's hilarious. Because I have this inner voice that's laughing at shit. And I don't always show it, but I'm just going, no, that's fucking crazy. I can't believe you say that. And sometimes I give a little response back or tag what they're saying or something. But I get out in my car and I write that down and go, it's fucking hilarious. And I don't know I can take that out of me. And actually, I thought at one time that I would write for people, that maybe I should take some of my stuff and say...
Why would you want to take that out of you?
Because it's not my focus, performing. And what good does it do? Yeah. I mean, on my phone, I got a bit that's probably a 1.5 minute bit that I wrote yesterday. What am I going to do with it? Why am I taking the time? But something was on TV, it kind of clicked something. I put it on pause and I started writing. okay, yeah, it should lead in this way, then I should hit this, and here's where the really funny part is, and then I could tag it with there, we're out. Okay, there's a little bit, a little 4 laugh spot joke. Then I think, well, maybe somebody could use that.
Yeah, see, this is where I kind of see comedy as like the bigger meaning of it all. Like, and how I think there's incredible benefit to people being able to see the world comedically.
Yeah,
and
I think so
like
too.
even
Yeah.
if you're not writing jokes, like you said, you've been writing them your whole life. I think pretty much anyone who gets into this has been viewing the world comedically.
Yes.
For the majority of their life.
Exactly.
And that's what made them think maybe I can do this. And it's not exclusive to the people who get up and tell jokes. They're like, a lot of people view the world comedically, and it's incredibly beneficial. Can you imagine, like, do you think, I mean, this might seem utopian of an idea, but do you think, like, if everyone, like, was laughing about farts, do you think we'd have nuclear weapons? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no, like, you can't. Like, and that's the thing about comedy, and one thing that made me really start missing it was, no matter how bad of a day I would have at work or anything like that, I'd walk around all day long knowing that I get to do this.
Yeah.
And knowing that the weekend's coming, I'm at this club this weekend, and I get to do this, and I feel so fortunate. I started looking at people differently. I started, like, people who don't do it, I'd look at them and be like, how do you make it through your day? You don't get to have,
exactly.
you don't get to have this outlet. I mean, it's so amazing. And it made me realize something. And I've heard Jerry Seinfeld say this before, but it made me realize, like, I don't want any part of the like, to be part of this, like, machine world anymore. Like, I only want to be on the sideline, like, making observational quips about it.
That's the same thing Billy Reno said.
And
I just want to tell jokes.
But then I
just want to tell jokes.
I thought, what an, like, it would be a boring world if everyone was like that. You need only a certain percentage of people to be like that. But I also think, like, so many problems that we have, would those exist if everyone was off on the sideline being like, none of this is really all that important?
Yeah.
Because when you can make a joke about something, you're taking a problem and you're working through it, and you're saying, like, this isn't that big of a problem because I can laugh about it.
Yeah.
And one of my biggest goals in comedy is to get good enough that I can talk about the death of my brother on stage in a way that is hopeful and funny. Because every single person...
That's a tough get.
It is, but I've seen some incredible comics do it.
Yeah,
Like Dave Landau, one of the greatest from Michigan, talks about his dad and his mom dying, and it's amazing. And he brings everyone along on it, and every single person can relate to that.
Yeah.
And everyone is looking for hope, right? And like that's one of my biggest goals. And I've been cowardly about it.
You know what? I hope you can do that, but my experience is that there's a big percentage of people that just don't resonate with comedy or laughter. I mean, you almost got to force them into it. Now, some people get you right off the bat. I mean, but truly less than 5% of the people that I've ever met in my lifetime actually get me. Now, once in a while, like I remember my Aunt Janet, I couldn't walk in the room without her starting to laugh. My first mother-in-law, same way, thought I was hilarious. I had a girl I dated twice, and one time for a year and a half, and she found out I was doing comedy. She said, I didn't even know you're funny.
I love that response. I've gotten that so many times. I love that. When
I'm
people
hilarious.
are like, you're doing comedy now? I never knew you were funny.
Exactly.
I love that.
Who is that on? Dude, that's not about me. That's about you.
That's my most favorite, like, backhanded or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, this from people that know you.
Sure.
Have been around you for a long time.
Well, people know you on different
levels,
planes.
You know what?
And there's going to be very few people. If you say 5% of people really know you, that's pretty good odds.
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe it's not 5.
I've had a handful of people in my entire life. Like, I mean, So,
But comedy, there's a lot of people in comedy that get you.
they get
I get your humor.
They get your act, but they might not get all the nuts and bolts of you. That takes a long time to deconstruct a person.
Well,
and
I don't
really
know that they have to know
figure
all
how
the nuts and bolts. Just to get on the same wavelength.
Oh, sure.
My aunt didn't know all the things about me.
Yeah.
But we were on the same wavelength. I mean, if we're in the same room, I could just give her a look and she'd know what I'm thinking. Like, yeah, well, all right, then we're doing this.
You got a pretty odd wavelength, Ted.
Yeah, I do. It's short-circuited.
And here's the thing with that, too, is I'm always amazed at, like, I feel like I've been described as being like a likable comic, and I didn't set out to do that. That's just kind of...
Well, that's key, though.
That's just kind of how I am. But there are comics out there that aren't that likable that kill. And I'm so impressed with those types of comics. And they're being who they are.
Yeah.
But I look at comics that have... I feel like a lot of my material is easily digestible because a lot of it is relative to a large portion of people who have had kids, they've been married.
But all of it's presented in kind of a kind-hearted way, too.
Sure. But
it isn't aggressive or mean or critical.
I feel like, I feel like a lot of it is comedy layups. And part of it is me getting better and developing more where I can take like a 3-point shot where it's a little more higher risk. But I am so impressed when I see a comic that can take a concept so simple and write an enormous joke about it.
I do
so
too.
Obscure.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
And the one thing I've noticed the more I get into comedy, I like watching comedy that isn't for me now. Whereas before I'd watch a comic and 5 minutes in I'd be like, oh, they're not funny. I don't relate to any of this. I don't want to watch that.
Yeah.
I like watching comedy more now that isn't for me and thinking about how did they develop this? How did they work it out to the point where they created an audience for themselves?
Right.
You look at like someone like Maria Bamford, who's like brilliant, so funny. But you think like you watch her special and then you plug it into like the shows you and I have done or some of the rooms you and I have done. And you think, man, how many times did she eat complete shit to be able to, one, build an audience that is coming to see her and just hone like a persona that everyone gets on board with.
Right.
So like that, you going back to like not a lot of people get you and stuff like that. Like, I think it's a misconception to be a good comic that you have to be a person who appeals to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like some of the greatest comics don't appeal to an enormous mass of people.
Right. Well, I don't think I'm that likable on stage with a certain group of people. If you're over 50 years old and you're kind of an industrial kind of person, you're going to relate to me and go, yeah, I kind of get Ted. He's kind of got the same background. So that's an easy crowd. It's my crowd. But we got to perform to people outside your crowd, and that's a little bit more difficult, I think.
Yeah, it is. But it goes back to that thing about like I guess you have to think of like what your objective is with comedy. Like I've met different comics that span from the arc of like, I'm a pure artist and I'm putting my art out there.
Right.
And those who don't like it, it doesn't matter. All the way to the other side where I'll work any room. I'll make anyone laugh. I will adapt to any audience that I have.
Yeah.
I will work clean, dirty, everything in between. And I will tailor jokes specifically to what this crowd is and everything in between. And I think part of the process is learning where you fall in that arc and then like what your goal of it is really going to be.
Right.
Like,
Well, I think the first thing that was important to me was to find my voice.
Sure.
To find out, what
That's
perspective I was going to
yeah.
speak from. And one of the last things I learned is that I should try and be more likable and more personable, more real before I start hitting them with jokes. Mm-hmm. Sal was coaching me on that, and I think that's good. But ultimately, I was kind of a comic researcher. I always felt like I was trying things. How edgy can I be? I mean, I did some jokes I called my Negro jokes in black rooms, which is kind of risky.
Sure.
But they went over really big. And so I'd go home and go, why did that work? Or when I first started, I tend to talk fast, especially when I'm doing comedy. Don't know why, but I do. And I always felt like I was trying to beat people to the punchline. Like I gotta twist it and be clever before they figure out where I'm going, because that makes it funnier. And then I figured out a bit I was doing about being old. And you might have heard it. I don't know. It's about taking tours of my own house. I'm looking for my favorite oversized plastic golf tee. And in the bit, I find the tee, and then I wonder if I'm golfing, and then I go to the calendar and I'm golfing, and then I go to the TV to find out what day it is, because I'm looking at the calendar. It doesn't mean anything unless I go to the Weather Channel and find out on the Weather Channel they announce the day. So I go in this circle, and then I end up going, oh, I wonder if I can find my golf tee. So I'm back where I started, and once I locate it, I go, oh yeah, I wonder if I'm golfing again. And so I do the exact same routine twice in it, each one of the 4 stations twice. And the interesting thing to me, it was a big get for me, was they know exactly what I'm going to say, and I'm pausing before I say it. And then the longer I pause, the more they laughed. I thought, how weird is this? They know the line. They know what I'm going to say. I just said it a minute ago. Now, it's kind of funny because the whole bit's about losing your memory. And while I'm telling you the joke, I'm losing my memory telling the joke. So there's kind of a couple layers to it, which is kind of interesting. But still, it was a nuanced thing I learned about comedy that I didn't know before. That I didn't know I could say something that they anticipate, they know the words, and yet I'm going to get an involuntary laugh response from saying those words they know is coming up. And that was a really big thing for me. Now that bit, depending on my timing, sometimes just killed, and sometimes it felt a little flat because I rushed through it, but that's normal comedy. But I always thought that finding out things like that. Also, I'm very meticulous about the number of syllables in words.
Well, that's important. You need to be. There has to be rhythm.
Yes. I mean, even my finder, chatter, caller meter, treater meter, feeder fuckers, it's important to say fucker. And even though that makes it dirtier, there's no word that fits in there. You know what I mean? And adding one word and taking one word in and out, I found to be really impactful. And so finding these things out, they were aha moments for me. And when I went out and tried it and they worked, I thought, I know why that works. That's crazy, but I know why that works.
Sure.
Now,
that's a great thing. Like, and some of the greatest comics, you take a look back at them and they do become formulaic. And not that that's a bad thing.
Yeah. But there's a cross between that and being natural. I mean, where's that blend?
Well, I think you can be both. Yeah. But you talk about those anticipatory laughs I consider those like Zen moments of comedy.
Yeah.
And I have a handful of jokes where, like they know the punchline's coming.
Yes.
And they're already laughing before it's coming. And it's amazing once you get comfortable enough and you've done enough reps.
Yeah.
And
you trust it.
You can sit in that moment.
Yeah.
And then it's like surfing. It's like riding a wave. And you're like, how long can I sit on this curl?
Yeah. Before I drop
perfect moment to drop and then hit them with it. And like all of that, like you called it nuance. That's the difference between, like you said, you had Billy Ray Bauer in here. That happens after 30 years.
Isn't that
right?
crazy? Yeah. And the other one that I thought was interesting, that's kind of the same thing. I mean, it's a different point, is I found out that the punchline doesn't have to be that funny. It only has to be timed properly and have the right relationship to the setup. In that I was doing an opening joke and found out a comic with more seniority than me was doing the same joke. So I abandoned the joke. So I had to come up with my own. And the joke was, I'm from Flint, Michigan. I normally don't tell people I'm from Flint, Michigan because, I'm from Flint, Michigan. And because of that, that's it. That's a whole joke. But because of that hesitation those little stammers and those hesitations and just there's nothing funny about I'm from Flint and I don't tell people I'm from Flint because I'm from Flint. If you wrote that on a piece of paper, it looks like shit.
Yeah, you can't judge any comedy on paper.
Yeah, I know. I have people, text me one of your jokes. I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
Nate Bargatze is like one of my all-time favorites, and if you read an entire script of his entire special, you would
laugh.
You would think like, why is any of this funny? And then if you even had another comic deliver it, you'd be like, none of this is funny.
Yeah.
There's certain comics where you could retell their joke.
Yeah.
Like at a party.
Yeah.
To strangers, and it'll be funny.
Yeah.
And then there's certain comics where you'd never be able to retell their joke. Only they can do it. Do you remember the last time you and I worked together, who we were working with?
Is that when we worked at...
It was one of sales shows, but Dave Dyer was the headliner.
Yeah.
So Dave Dyer,
is
in
hilarious.
my opinion, is one of the best joke writers in Michigan.
Yeah.
He does something that I don't see any other comics do, where he has punchlines that he whispers. And like, how many comics do you know who's whispering a punchline and everyone's rolling? And so like most jokes have a crescendo that goes upward, right?
Yeah.
And then you like hit them with this explosive punchline. He has jokes that, and first of all, I don't think he never has any fat on his jokes. They're so trimmed down and perfect.
Yeah.
And he'll be building up to a punchline, and then all of a sudden it'll be coming down, and he'll literally whisper the punchline. The first time I saw it, I'm like, that's amazing. I've never seen anyone do that before.
That is amazing.
I don't know if you remember, like when we worked together.
I just wrote the other day might work that way.
There you go.
It might, honestly. I'll show it to you once we get off the air.
I had been such a big fan of his, and when you and I last worked with him, I was so excited to watch him. And you are so chatty, and you were talking to me the whole time. And I remember going, Ted, I'm watching Dave Dyer right now, man. I gotta watch this.
Yeah, I do that. Sorry. That's why this is TED Talks too much.
Yeah, that's why I came here today.
Yeah. To reprimand you and say you do talk too much.
No, it's interesting, all the nuance of comedy, and that's what makes it so dynamic and so interesting. And
but people on the outside don't realize that, I don't think.
They don't. My wife says that all the time, because throughout all of this, she's become what I would consider like a fan of comedy now.
Yeah.
And, whether she wants to or not, she hears all of this talk.
Yes.
And I talk with her. Sometimes she's like lends an ear, and sometimes she just wants me to shut up about it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, she'll always tell me, she goes, I didn't know any of this before you started doing this. I didn't get it.
Well, neither did you.
No.
I mean, it's kind of like, I remember asking Joel when I first started, either that or Bill. Yeah, one of the guys. I said, is it kind of like the Wizard of Oz? And I'm going to pull back the curtain and find the guy with the little levers and then not be as impressed with the wizard. And they said, yeah, it's kind of like that.
Yeah, Bill did say, he goes, you're going to be prepared to laugh at a lot less comedy.
Yeah.
But that's not, but I appreciate it so much more now.
Yeah.
Even if I don't laugh at it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
You know what?
That's another thing I miss even more than getting up and performing right now.
Watching other comics?
I miss being able to watch comics every week. And I mean, I would sit in the crowd quite often. I wasn't like someone who would just hang out in the green room the entire time.
Yeah.
I was there for the show just as much as other people.
I went to a lot of shows that I was not on.
Yeah.
If you were local, it wouldn't be unusual for me to show up.
Yeah, I saw you show up at stuff before.
Because I enjoy watching what people are doing. And actually, if they do well, I'm like, oh, that's really cool that worked, and look what he did and how he did it. And if they do lousy, I think, God, I am funny.
Now, I would have done that a lot more. Like Ron Rigby does that a lot.
Yeah.
I always envied him for it. And I told my wife one time, I'm like, I think I want to start getting out of the house more to just watch comedy.
Yeah.
And she goes, all right, then you're not performing then too. It's a huge negotiation to get out of the house anyway. But she's like, you're not going to we got a short sleeper at home. Like, we're not.
We got issues.
Yeah.
You're here too. And actually the really cool thing for me is I didn't start comedy until I was 60. And, I might be the oldest guy around that's local. I mean, Norm Stoltz is pretty old, but I'm one of the oldest guys doing stand-up. But I have I don't know how you define friends, but I have close acquaintances that I have this commonality with. I am part of this group with people that are 25 years old, 35. How in the world would I ever go anywhere and have this group of peers if I wasn't doing comedy? And at my age, it's kind of neat to be able to go out and find something new and fresh in a community that accepts you, and to be in good standing. Not, oh, we'll let him in because he's old. Because at some level, all the comics know how good you are or how good you aren't. I mean, there is a little meritocracy to it. Sure, you got to be in with the right people to get on some shows sometimes or whatever. But more or less, when you show up at a show, you know who's going to be pretty good and who's not going to be as good. And to be able to be one of the gang and recognized for my comedy at the level it's at within the group, at my age, that's really cool. I'm not sure that, a third of my graduating class is dead. I mean, and to be able to be out and active and doing this and accepted by people. I mean, I would never know you. I would never know Billy Reno. I would never know, most of these people. Chris Lazar is a good buddy of mine. He's 26 years old. Mm-hmm. We hang out, we golf, we do other things outside of comedy. That only happens because of comedy and the comedy community. Not that I love everybody in comedy. We've got our assholes. There's a few of them, and a few of them are unkind, and a few of them are pushy and mean. But every community has that.
Yeah, you fall in you get in where you fit in, right?
Yeah.
And to speak on that, and that's a huge appeal of mine, and this speaks to the brilliance of my wife to realize that, like, with bike racing, a large part of it was just being immersed in a subculture, and the camaraderie of it.
And this is a subculture.
I used to tell my wife all the time, I'm like, we could literally move to any city in the U.S. I could go on one group ride, and the next day I would have 50 best friends.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But it's because it's very similar to comedy, and there's so many lessons from bike racing that I learned that transfer over. It's because there is a progression to it. And there's a ladder. And with bike racing, no one starts off racing Pro 1-2 category. They start off doing citizens races and moving up, just like open mics.
Yes.
And everyone that you meet who's involved in something that you're so passionate about, they're somewhere on that ladder.
And they recognize where you're at.
And they recognize where you're at. And like the greatest comics that, what I found is some of the biggest names that they have nothing to prove. And they are respectful of you wherever you're at on that ladder. And they're not that guy at that open mic, like you said, that they have to talk about why they're so funny and that sort of thing. And it should be a community that builds everyone up. Because like at the beginning when we started talking, it's mutually beneficial for us to all be funny.
Yes, it is.
You don't want, if people go to comedy and it sucks, we aren't going to exist anymore. We aren't going to have opportunities anymore.
Well, we all did our time doing open mics at laugh tracks or whatever and getting no laughs with 12 other comics, just trying to work the kinks out. But then when you move up to showcases, now you're getting where you're one of the better ones at the showcases. And then that's about the time Billy and I went on tour. And so we're doing open mics when we hit these new cities. Interestingly, we don't know anybody. We're just walking in. Before the show, kind of an okay reception, whatever. We're not real talky, but, we're trying to be friendly. But after the show, if we had a good set, let's be friends on Facebook. Everybody wants to talk to you then because, like, for open micers, we're pretty damn good. And they're like, oh, this is kind of cool. So all of a sudden we had some status in that group. And then the guy running the show would say, hey, we got a better show tomorrow. It's a showcase. Do you want to be on it? And, we even got on some pro shows while we were out there, which was really, really cool. But it was only because we were viewed as being worthy at the open mic or wherever we showed up. Also, I remember there was one, I can't remember where it was, but the guy that travels with Ron White and is his opening act was at the open mic. It was a big open mic. It was a nice place. And afterwards, I went out and talked to him for hour and a half, and told me all about comedy and stuff. And it's really interesting. And his set, which I thought was kind of interesting, he didn't do any jokes. He just got up and started talking about stuff and talking about being there and talking about people in the room. And all of a sudden, doing a little bit of crowd work, something hit. Something hit with somebody. and he kind of pushed on that. And that's the road he went down. I thought, wow, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Well, it's like,
he's not writing. There's no strategy other than he's going to be kind of smart about what he says and how he says it. And he brings it back up at the end. It's like, he's writing comedy right in front of us, which is really cool.
You're watching a chef starting with the raw ingredients.
Yeah.
And they aren't putting the plate in front of you yet.
Yeah, they're going, I don't even know what I'm going to make.
Yeah.
Let's see what we got.
And
they're just looking around the kitchen.
That's a benefit to, because I think up until we all got shut down and there is no more comedy anymore, what we're in right now.
Yeah.
I think up until that, we were in the middle of a comedy boom right now. And part of it is just because of all the different outlets for it now. So like, and I think a result of that is there have been more people who have been interested in learning how the meal is prepared.
Yeah.
People have been interested more in the process of comedy now.
Yeah.
Because the average person didn't understand when you watch Eddie Murphy's Delirious, that's a finished product.
Yeah,
That's
right.
something that got perfected.
Right.
But now people, you go the Comedy Store in LA, people fly from all over the world now
Right.
to watch some of the biggest name comics not do their act, just be working jokes out.
Yes.
Because people like the process now.
When we were at the Comedy Store, Bill Burr went up right in front of me and Billy, and he walked and there's 3 rooms at the Comedy Store, and the lowest room is the belly room. Ron Taylor was working the door. I talked to Ron, and I had performed at Joey's with him, so I knew him. And a hilarious guy. And he's doing really well right now, by the way. But anyhow, he let us into the belly room. We went back there, and we're watching open micers. I got to tell you, comedy is not booming everywhere. We saw some lousy open micers, even in L.A., even at the belly room. I mean, wasn't that funny?
I don't. By saying there's a boom, though, doesn't mean it's all quality.
No, there's just a lot of it.
I mean, there's
just
loud. Yeah, there's an interest in it.
But the interesting thing was Bill Burr walked in and did 15 right in front of us, in front of 35 people in the audience, and I was sitting upside with the comics, maybe, I don't know, half a dozen of us up there, and he didn't do any jokes. He didn't do any set. He didn't do any routine. He was just up there talking about his new daughter and just kind of feeling stuff out.
What day of the week was that?
I don't know, dude.
Yeah,
dude, I'm old, and it was 2 years ago. Yeah, that was a Wednesday.
Yeah,
no, I have no idea.
Just out of curiosity.
I have no idea. Why do you think he's got a steady day that he does that or something?
No, I just listen to I'm a fan of his podcast, so he'll talk about when he drops in there every once in a while and stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I don't know. We were thrilled when they started introducing him. Billy Reno was just elbowing me in the ribs. I'm like, what? What? You know him from this? And I'm like, I have no idea who this is. So I go, Bill Burr. I go, oh, I know him. Yeah, it was really cool to see him.
Sure.
It's like in a room with 35 people. Who expects that? It was weird.
And so, and picking back to that whole subculture thing, I feel like the comics that maybe make a progression quicker, or I learned something very shortly into comedy, that there is no shortage of very funny people. We have this delusion that we're this commodity.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of very funny people.
Yeah.
But there is a shortage of people who don't allow their ego to get in the way of it, who don't make it competitive, who are easy to work with, who are supportive of one another. And, I've been on weekend shows where I maybe didn't get along with the headliner very well.
Yeah.
And I think it reflects in the show. When you have a group of 3 comics working together for the weekend who are really getting along and jiving and everything's doing well.
Everything's funny.
I think it reflects in the show.
Yeah.
And I think people who embrace the camaraderie of it, regardless of if they're your style or you even respect their jokes or anything like that.
Yeah.
I think the people who embrace the camaraderie of it are the people who get more offers and go further. I mean, of course you have to be funny.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's first and foremost. But there are a lot of funny people.
Right. I think reflecting on the success I had in the business world and the success my daughter had in sports, and only looking back while she was being successful in her golf career, did I realize that the same things that were making her successful in golf were the ones that made me successful in business. And there were just 3 things. One, you have to have some God-given gifts. You got to have some talent for what you're doing. You got to follow a path that you have some ability. You need good hand-eye coordination. There's things you just can't do without some God-given gifts in that area. That's number one. Number two, you got to have crazy drive. I mean, it doesn't matter how big they are. All these people have crazy amount of drive. I'm willing to work 80 hours to do a 10-minute performance.
Yeah.
That's crazy in order to think of all the workout, everything that goes into this little window of opportunity to actually use it. And even when you can do it better than everybody else, say, I'm going to go back and practice some more. That's crazy. But you need that crazy amount of drive. And the third thing, coachability. You got to be humble enough to know I could be better. There's ways I can improve. I can't. If you're standing still, you're falling behind. That you always have to say, Tiger Woods' coach cannot beat Tiger Woods, but he can tell him something of value. That there's people around you. If you stop and open up your ears and listen, your friends and your peers and people around you probably have some good suggestions. Now, at the top level, when my daughter was an attractive golfer, every golfer in the world wanted to give her a tip. A lot of it you shut out. But once in a while, there are people that you run into that really have something of value, that they see it from a slightly different angle or something that you can work on. And if you're going to get better, you're always looking for something to tweak. So you should never feel bad about having something criticized because, if I can change that a little bit, the whole thing will come up. So it's three things. It's God-given gifts, it's drive, and it's coachability as far as I'm concerned. Now, I've heard that you need a little bit of luck, too, for a huge success. But I think everybody that I see that is very, very successful, from Michael Jordan, everybody, had all three of those in spades.
Well, and you could call it luck, but like that second component you're talking about, the middle one, the drive.
Yeah.
And call it luck or not. But I think when you're unwavering, when that drive is unwavering and it's not fragile. So like if that drive gets knocked down really easily, the whole thing's going to crash. But if you know that you're going to fail a lot, but the drive, it's not going to impact the drive at all.
Exactly.
I think that's where, like, call it luck or whatever, where that starts to become a factor. Because they never unwavered. Their drive was not impacted by their success or failure. Yeah. It just kept going.
But you also cannot decide I'm going to use my drive on a particular path. Say, this is the way it has to be. I've got to do this. You've got to be open to the universe coaching you and bumping you, going, that's kind of what you're supposed to be doing, but maybe you'd be better off doing this.
Well, self-awareness is a critical component.
Well,
like that old saying of, if you're not good at something, try again. That's a fallacy.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not good at something, try again, but then just quit. Yeah. And then seriously, and do
similar.
something that you might be better at.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I know somebody in the comedy community, and I won't name names, but there's a person in the comedy community that is one of the best promoters of comedy I've ever seen, and has the personality, the charisma, the drive to be a great promoter, but insists on being a comic. And I think, dude, I think you could be hugely successful as a promoter if you really focused. Now, I've never told the person this, but you see people that are really close, but just a little bit off target. I've always said you can pick your direction, but not your path. In business, I was in a number of businesses, did a number of different things till I found something that just, it so happened all my skills worked out. And that's funny. When you get on the top of something, you look back and go, oh, you know what? That's why I learned this lesson. This added to it too. Yeah. And all of a sudden there's this accumulation of things over time. Like for me, comedy, I thought, you know what? I got in trouble in first grade because I was lying during show and tell because I wanted to be up front for show and tell, and I ran out of things to tell that I wanted to be up front. And ultimately, I was president of my class in elementary school, and I was doing a lot of public speaking, and I had a lot of opportunity to do big public speaking because I enjoyed public speaking, and I have no nerves about it. I have a disconnect between my brain and my body when it comes to nerves. My body gets nervous. My brain doesn't know it. I've been on a big show, and before I've gone up, I've looked at my hands and thought, my hands are moist. I wonder why my hands are moist. And I think, oh, I must be nervous. Honestly, it just doesn't occur to me. My body is, but it's not a signal to me that that it's a nervousness. Now, my daughter, when she first went to her first golf tournament as a freshman on a really big, successful team, standing on the first tee, the coach said, are you nervous? And she said, no, I'm excited. So it's a matter of how you think about it. You're getting impulses, and how you take those, I think, determines where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a teacher, and this is an old adage. I didn't make this up by any stretch of the imagination, but
you're doing somebody else's material right now. Is that what you're saying?
No, I tell my students all the time, like if we're working on something that they don't think is important or something like that, I always say like if you're doing it right, there's literally nothing that you learn in life that is not worthwhile. Like every stimulus that comes into your brain, every lesson you learn will be applied directly or indirectly. And one quote that I always love, who I believe Robin Williams said it, was he said, stand-up is one of the only careers that you get to use everything you know. And I thought that was such a cool...
Wow, that is cool.
Such a cool quote. Like, and it's true. Like you get to put any ingredient of your being into it that you want. And if you choose to, you get to use like everything you know. Now, I'm sure it applies to other things too, but I always stuck to that one. It resonated with me.
I think that's great. The older I got, the more I realized that my college education wasn't a trade school for me. I didn't become a teacher, or I didn't become a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer. It was just have a broad education, just an understanding of a lot of things and a really broad palette to draw from. And when I was at the pinnacle of my business career, I was thrown into the mix with very wealthy, very successful people at very nice places that would want to have conversations about a variety of things. And at that point, you're kind of happy that you have a broad general understanding of a lot of things. So even those subjects you don't want to study at some point come into play in your life, and they become a part of your palette and who you are. Now, I don't think you should always bring all those things out. I mean, there's things, I try to play down and generally, unless it comes up, but it's nice to be able to talk with some kind of intelligence on some level about a broad array of things, I think.
Yeah.
Why are you laughing? Did I say something funny?
No. Well, you made me think of something when you said, I don't know if you should bring them all out at one time. So when I moved to a new job in November here, the old school I was at for 18 years, I was very comfortable. I had a group of people there that, like, much like hanging out with comics, like we could say anything with pure immunity, and we were inoffendable. And I remember my buddy gave me this word of advice when I was going to the new school, and he said, because as an educator, I have to edit myself quite often.
Yes.
Even being on this right now, thinking that the whole world could hear it.
Yeah.
I
can't say anything too wrong.
I've edited myself to a certain degree. I
don't have that filter. I don't know if you've noticed.
I haven't put all the tools out on the table. But I remember my buddy telling me when I was going to the new job, he goes, "Hey, Tim," he goes, I got a word of advice for you. He goes, maybe wait a while when you get to the new job until, like, you're Tim.
Be Tim first.
Yeah, he goes, maybe wait a little bit. Like, don't show him at all. Yeah. You might get fired right off the bat.
Well, it's kind of nice to have somebody that knows all the facets of you too, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So, and you want to be accepted for who you are, and you don't want, stereotypes put on top of you. I mean, I'm sure you didn't walk in and say, by the way, I'm a world-class bicyclist. I mean, that you don't want to lead with that. Here's why you should like me. You don't want to do those things. So.
Yeah, you got to ease in.
Tell you what, we ought to get out of here. And I really enjoyed having you in.
Yeah.
You're fun to talk to. You're nice. You're a great guy to know, man.
Yeah, you too, Ted. I love that we were able to do this. Honestly, like, This has been one of the most intimate conversations I've had in the last 8
Really?
weeks.
Can I say something naughty to you? I don't
No, I mean, I haven't had anyone yelling in the background, no
I
kids
know.
needing anything.
Wow.
I mean, by the time we put the kids to bed,
You
my
need
wife
a
and I
break.
collapsed. We do need a break.
You do.
Are you kidding me? I've been in the trenches for a long, long time.
Well, you're a hunter, right? You've hunted.
Yeah, yep,
and-
I hunt. Yeah, I mean, it's fun. I grew up fishing too. I think humans have been doing that for a lot longer than we haven't been doing it. So I think
Yeah.
we all kind of have a little
killing
bit
in the woods or
inside of
killing
us.
on stage.
Yeah.
It's all a bunch of killing.
There you go.
Hey, we got to get out of here. We're going to talk
Yeah,
forever. This has
I'm
been
gonna
long,
get in
long.
trouble.
Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks for coming in. It's good seeing you. Take care.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. This has been a lot of fun.
Appreciate your friendship.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you
man.
too, Ted.
All right, take care.
Yep.
All right, that's our show for today, and I want to give a big thanks to Mr. Tim Finkel for coming in and making it such a good one. Tim's a really entertaining and super nice guy. You want to keep an eye out for him. I will put links to Tim's site in the notes so you can find him that way. And as for me, you can always find me at tedtalkstoomuch.com, or you can email me at tedtalkstoomuch@yahoo.com, or follow me on Instagram if you want to see little 1-minute excerpts of my shows to decide which one you want to listen to. But I tell you what, do me a favor. If you laughed out loud or you found the show entertaining, please share it. I'd appreciate that. That'd help me out a lot. And just a parting thought with everything that's going on out in the world right now, I think it's time that we all try to be just a little bit more understanding of people who have opposing positions. I think that's important. Also, try really hard to be kind to people, would you? And to the best of your ability, just try to be happy. And until next time, I'm Ted Moss, and those are my thoughts.